The Scoreboard Shows, or the better known as the Smithburg Auto Scoreboard Show, brought to you by Smithburg Auto of Fairfield, Iowa. If you need to buy a car, if you need your car worked on, if you need to rent a car, or if you just need parts, you can get that at Smitty's Auto Salvage that he just picked up too. So he got you all the way covered. We got Coach Van Fleet, and we're doing the Scoreboard Show. We're doing it in the morning so we can have a little bit more accurate scores. But before I talk to our guests, I want to put out. I, I reported a score wrong Tuesday night. Winfield Mount Union beats Pekin by 5, not the other way around. The sheet I was looking on had the score inverted, but I talked to Coach Swanson and he told me the real score. So take the scoreboard show with a little grain of salt because I do make about at least one mistake a week. Coach Van Fleet.
We gotta make sure they're listening, Dave.
Yeah.
That's how I always say my mistakes. Is well, good. I was testing you to make sure you were listening there at home.
I'm glad you guys are paying attention out there. Well, Coach, it was a wild and woolly Friday night. And Friday nights, it just seems like everybody plays. So tell us a little bit about some of the goings on last night.
Yeah, so I traveled down to Keosauqua last night to watch Notre Dame at Van Buren. Again, we've talked a lot about on our pregame shows and a lot of these shows that we do about some of these different gyms and the different fields. And, Van Buren, it's an older, smaller gym. They had a good crowd in there last night, obviously, with the number 4 ranked 1A team in the house. And, the Warriors there, they had a good first probably 4 to 6 minutes. They kind of went toe to toe, got the first basket of the game, had the lead. And then, at some point against those elite teams, as we talk about, things just happen. And Dan Keys called a timeout. I believe it was like 27-21. Notre Dame was up. And Dan Keys called a timeout, kind of got into his guys a little bit. Shea Stevens got into his guys, and they came out and just went on a tear. I mean, they scored 16 points in what seemed to be about 2 minutes, and they ran away with it quick. The final score of that one was 83-35. So it was a long night for Coach Shulman and his guys, but like I said, they came out early, hit a couple shots, seemed to have Notre Dame a little frustrated. And, it's now the second time going around for all these teams, Dave, and in the conference. So everybody's now seen everybody once. So this was the second time that Van Buren had seen Notre Dame. They made a couple changes. But at the end of the day, just way too much speed and transition for Notre Dame. And, they can put points up on you quick. And at the end of the night, I do have some stats here. Obviously, Shea Stevens was leading scorer. Unofficially, I had him for 24 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. So didn't have a triple-double, but he was darn close. So, and that's only in 3 quarters. Obviously, they pulled him out after 3 when the running clock kicks in. So that's the game that I was at. I'm going to jump right into the second. What I thought was the best game last night, at least down here in Southeast Iowa, and that was Central Lee at Holy Trinity. We talk about another small gym that it's a little darker than most. They have some weird intricacies that go in when you play at Holy Trinity, especially if you're a good team. I believe it was the cake auction last night, which adds time to halftime. It adds time before the game. And so when you've got a cake auction going on, if you're the road team coming into Holy Trinity, they're taking you serious. They want the win. And this one went into double overtime. Central Lee really hit some big shots down the stretch, made their free throws down the stretch, and Central Lee was able to get it into double overtime and able to walk away with a win. Final score of that one, 62-58. Will Hayes, huge game, 23 points, went 9 of 10 from the free throw line. So that was the difference in the ballgame probably right there for Will Hayes to be able to knock down some big shots. Caden Swan had 15 points, Carson Morrison 14, Owen Swan, the senior, didn't shoot it well, only had 7 points, but Owen Swan just does anything his team needs to win. And, he's one of my favorite players down here in the league. and definitely a kid I would love to have on any team that I've got. But him and his brother just played their butts off. Will Hayes, huge night, and just hit some really good shots and made some big free throws down there in overtime. And Caden Swan came up huge in overtime with a couple big shots. So kudos to them. Those were kind of the two big games here. What'd you have up north?
Well, we had a real exciting game. Columbus and Lone Tree, it's a big matchup for both of those schools. Whoever was going to win this, Columbus did win the opening night against Lone Tree in a pretty hard-fought game. They get a nice little win, and they duplicate the first game as they get another win here. Although it was a very hard-fought win, and this Lone Tree has a pretty good player named Reese Holbrook. I'm really impressed with just every team needs to have a go-to guy, and he's that for sure. The Willocks kid played very well. And I don't know if this was affecting these other games that you were talking about, but it's affected a lot of games that I've been. There's a lot of kids with the flu, it seems like. And you're either not able to play or you're just not playing at your very best. But there was some of that. But Columbus goes to 6-10 on the season and 5-4 in the district. And they matched the most wins they had, which was last year, 6, and that was the most they'd had in 20 years. They think they're turning things around. They got a couple really good players, had big nights last night. Little Poison, Tim or Ellis Hill's carrier, and then Drake Marin. He also had a 20-plus night game. I don't know how many rebounds those guys had, but I think all three of those had quite a few.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously we talked about before we came on Columbus being at 6-4. They're having a heck of a year. The thing that stuck out to me in that game was Columbus came out, scored 27 points in the first quarter. So they were on pace for over 100 in a 32-minute ball game. So shot the ball well, obviously pretty fast paced. They made 21 points in the fourth. The final quarter was 21-22. So
they scored a lot of points in the last 2 minutes of that game.
Yeah, so a lot of free throws, a lot of buckets. So 21-22 in the fourth quarter definitely makes for an exciting game. But, that 12-point lead that Columbus got out to in the first quarter ended up being the difference in the ball game. So, yeah, kudos to them. And, obviously they're playing good ball right now. And that's a good win for them on the road. Anytime you can win on the road, it's a good win. So, obviously, kind of like down here in the South, everybody's battling for that 2 seed in the Super Conference shootout, and yeah, Columbus is battling for it right now.
Yeah, they're last year, Winfield, Mount Union, Hillcrest, Waco, and Pekin were the top teams. And that was the case the year before and the year before and the year before. And this year, you can say that's the case this year. But Columbus is trying to make a little case, trying to step somewhere into that range or at least become the top of the middle. And everybody's just doing what they can. And I think they're having a pretty great time. It was a great game. And it was a great gym. I really like Lone Tree's gym. There's a lot of black and gold. There's a beautiful mural on the wall of a lion busting through the wall, and that looks cool. And all the fans are all on one side. So, and it's a smaller, older gym, and I just have some nostalgia for that. But I thought we had a great game last night, and it was a terrific game. But there was some other games in the area. Well, there were some games Thursday. There was a couple games Thursday night. I think Meepo played Wilton, and I know that Waco played North Lynn. I know something.
So Waco played North Lynn. North Lynn ended up getting the win in that one, 56-49. So, obviously Waco losing the home game, that one, that's a tough one for them. L&M played. That was another road team that came in and got a win. Cedar Valley Christian went into Louisa Muscatine, and Cedar Valley Christian got the win 64-54 on Thursday night. So a lot of these teams now doing non-conference Monday or Thursday night or Saturday. Those are kind of the 3 nights that you can do a non-conference, either Monday, Thursday, or Saturday. And so a lot of teams are starting to get those non-conference games in. The big upset, in my opinion, on Thursday night was Minneapolis went up to Wilton and they took one on the chin. Minneapolis has really played well and played well on the road. You know, they last week going down to Central League, getting a huge win down there against those guys. They went up to Wilton on Thursday night and they got beat 71-60. And, you know, Wilton's a tough place to play, good program. Historically, they do some good things. And, you know, it was pretty battle tested. 18-17, Wilton was up one after the first quarter, but they just kind of kept pulling away. They outscored me both 16-11 in the second, and then 23-17 in the third. Minneapolis did kind of battle back there, outscored them 15-14 in the fourth, but you know, Wilton just kind of kept their foot on the gas, and you know, 71 points, a lot of points there for their squad. And you know, Wilton's sitting there at 4-4, so that's a big win for them, and obviously for Coach Worrell and the Bulldogs. You know, they you know you obviously a non-conference loss isn't as big of a deal as a conference loss, especially when you're battling for, you know, that 2 seed with Central Lee and in the shootout. But again, it was just a tough one for them. But they did turn it around last night. Let's just get right into it. They went to Danville, which again, Danville at their place, that's a really hard place to win at. And they came in, and obviously coming off the loss on Thursday, they were probably a little salty, Dave. They came in and beat Danville 65-48. So not only a good offensive night, but a good defensive night, holding the Bears to only 48 points. But
I talked to Coach Worrell recently, and it doesn't matter whether you're Meepo or Notre Dame or Van Buren, your schedule's tough. You know what I mean? Every night's tough. Every game you play, you know, and you better not take the night off with Van Buren, because they got some 3-point shooters, and I think they got the makings of some good things going there. A little taller than they were last year, but they do seem to be undersized, which matters a lot there. But yeah, I just mentioned to him, I said, you know, that's a pretty impressive record considering what you guys play night in and night out, because Central League can beat you any night of the week, and Holy Trinity can, and West Burlington can, and I mean, it's just, and Danville can, you know, I mean, that's and then you play these other non-conference games. A school like Wilton, you know, you can't sleep on them either.
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, and like you said, this time of year, whether it's injuries or the flu bug, or you know, kids just not being ready to play, it's really one of those things where you got to have, and it happens. We talk a lot about, you know, having 14 to 18-year-old kids. You know, so there's just sometimes nights where they just don't have it, or something's going on, and you know, it's you have to be able to rise to the occasion every single night, and that's a really hard thing to do. And there's always going to be a night or two, even with the good teams, where you just drop one. And so it happens. It happens to everybody, and so obviously you got to be ready to go. The other game that I had down here in the South, and I was watching it on afar from my phone, but New London went into West Burlington. And, you know, I wasn't obviously New London trying to get that first win of the year. West Burlington's playing at home. They're coming off that tough loss on Tuesday night to Notre Dame. I turn it on and I'm like, I'll just check it out, see how it's going. And the first thing that I notice is not only is it a very close game in the first quarter, I think it was a 1-point game, but I don't see that big wavy curly hair of Aiden Figueroa's out on the floor. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? And all of a sudden I look at the end of the bench and I see Aiden Figueroa in street clothes, sitting at the end of the bench, clapping up his team. And so I immediately sent a text message to my former assistant, Corey O'Brien, who I knew would be at the game. And I was like, what in the heck's going on? So Figgy did not dress last night. He suffered a little bit of a leg injury. They're hoping it's not serious, but they're getting him checked out. But out of precaution, they decided to hold him out last night. So Falcons went into that game without their leading scorer, leading rebounder, the senior captain, and it was close in the first half, but Notre Dame, West Burlington pulled away. Final score of that one was 62-39, and it was a very balanced scoring effort for the Falcons. Silas Lotso, 13 points. Payson Brown, 13 points. Ari Jannings, 13 points. And 9 points for, I want to say it was Austin Fletcher Bates. And I want to give a shout out to their leading scorer real quick, Dave. Pryor Bowen ended up with 14. And Pryor Bowen's really, he struggled. He will be the first to admit it. He's really struggled so far this year from the three. Hasn't shot the ball great. Pryor Bowen, he's a 6'3" guard that can shoot the ball. He had a great JV career. He sat on the bench at the varsity since he was freshman. We've really been waiting in West Burlington here to have his coming out party, and it was so great to see him step up and make a couple threes last night. Ended up with 14 points, played really well, and so kudos to him. He's worked really hard at it here the last couple months to try to get that shot clicking again. So they're going to need him down the stretch, especially if Figueroa, is battling some injuries. But it was a very balanced effort last night from that starting five, and ended up being a pretty good win when it was all said and done. But New London did come in. Porter came in, had a good night for them. I think he finished with 9. I'm sorry, he had 4. Lemley had, got it here, 9 points. Leading scorer, I want to say London Franklin ended up with 14 for them. So, yeah, so good night for them. Obviously for the Falcons, and New London still trying to get that first win.
Well, the schedule is not kind to them. I mean, you're trying to rebuild a team. And this is a team that 3 years ago was in a state tournament. But you got to have them great players, and they just ain't there all the time, and it helps to have more than one of them. But New London will get it going again, and they'll get a win this year all around. I guarantee it. And none of them almost none of them have ever not come to fruition. Well, I do have some other scores. I know Keokuk. Let me just look and see. Let me get they get a win over BGM.
Yeah, so they beat Clark County last night in the Highland tournament, and I believe it was third. It said third place game, but yeah, so they won 89-30. So they won.
Yeah, they got
59 points.
Okay. Mid Prairie they got beat by Alburnett, which is always a thorn in everybody's side, and they had another loss, but they get back on track with a 78-61 win over the West Liberty Comets, who I've been to their new ballpark. That's their new football stadium and baseball stadium is state of the art, man. Maybe one of the most newest ones around. Well, okay, let me see that. That score doesn't make no sense. Okay, my man, Coach Islick, goes up to Montezuma, and he does not come away with the win here. They got a Bolton kid up there that is just all kinds of some kind of basketball player, and they get a 64-54 win. We'll have the Sigourney Savages on. They're making their Round Guy Radio debut at 2 o'clock with the JV game, and then we'll give you the varsity game too right after that. Let me see what else we got here. Oh, the Pekin Panthers. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say Fairfield at Mount Pleasant last night. We haven't talked about that one. Fairfield comes in and gets the win, 62-42.
Fairfield wins the game?
What's that?
You say Fairfield wins?
Yes.
Wow, because my sheet says they didn't.
Yeah, according to.
How about that? The Fairfield Trojans put 2 wins back to back.
Oh, my bad. It's opposite on bound. My bad. When I go on here, yes, Mount Pleasant 62, Fairfield 42.
Yeah, that's what I've got. Okay. Well, I mean, we ain't perfect over here.
22 points, Ryan Helling with 18.
Okay.
So yeah, sorry about that.
All right. Well, the Pekin Panthers take on the Wapello Indians. It looked like that's a home game last night, and they get the win 64-56. Wapello's got some wins this year, and they've been pretty competitive. They have pretty good performance here tonight. But Pekin gets back in the winner's circle after the game with Winfield Mount Union. Winfield Mount Union's defense is so strong. Schools really have been struggling with scoring on them. I don't know if Winfield Mount Union's lights the scoreboard up every night, but they sure have some good ones. But the Pekin Panthers and the Sigourney Savages in what is known as the backyard brawl here, they play it once a year, and it's a big deal. And these two communities, which enjoy living near each other, also like to beat each other. It's quite the rivalry, and so we'll have that for you on Round Guy Radio. Burlington gets a big win over Washington. I don't know if you know anything about that one.
Yeah, 66-56. So shout out to Coach Akey and the Greyhounds, man. They've been playing good, and that's a good win at Washington. You know, Minneapolis went to Washington earlier in the year and got beat. So that's a big win for them to kind of, it's a good conference win on the road, and definitely kind of keeps them in that race to battle Keokuk for that title. Fort Madison was off last night. I think they played today, and so yeah, they're at Central Lee, so
that'll be a good one too.
Yep, and Davenport Central coming down here today at 3:30 to take on Burlington. So we're gonna have some good luck.
It's a dang busy week for Burlington, but that was a big win there. You know, we'd kind of established through this first part of the season that the top three was Keokuk, Washington, and Burlington, and then then there's a battle for the next three, which would be Fairfield, Mount Pleasant, and Fort Madison. Mount Pleasant takes a little step forward last night in the win, and we'll have to see if Coach Rawson will come on and talk about that. But yeah, we're starting to find the top and the middle anyway into the season.
Keokuk's 4-0 in the conference. Burlington at 4-1. Mount Washington at 3-2, and then it goes 2-3 for Mount Pleasant, 1-4 for Fairfield, and then Fort Madison sitting there at the bottom. So.
Okay. Well, what other is there? You got to win. I never could find a Winfield Mount Union score.
I didn't see one on.
Do you got a Hillcrest score for me?
Hillcrest Academy last night played Highland, and Hillcrest Academy came out the winner in that one 72-34. So Hillcrest Academy improves to 10-0. They came out quick. They were up 26-7 on the Huskies in that first quarter, and then outscored them 19-11 in the second. It was all Hillcrest all night. Outscored Highland. I mean, even towards the end in the fourth quarter, they outscored them 12-2. So their bench must be pretty solid. Also, because it was probably a situation, I didn't watch it, but it was probably a situation where they pulled the starters. But yeah, Hillcrest has played really well the last 2 years. You know, we saw them last year. They won the North. We saw them in the shootout at Warren Walker Arena down here at SCC, and obviously we made them have a pretty rough night. But they're playing good basketball right now. They got a new coach, I believe.
Yeah.
I believe Dwight's gone there now.
Dwight's the coach. He was at the last game I was at, though, just watching in the stands there. Yeah, you know it's tough. You know you're in for a tough night when the coach you're playing's name's on the floor there. and if they cannot win any more state championships, so they'll have to build a bigger gym to display all the friggin' banners that they've got for all the great basketball and everything they got down there. Well, I did want to mention Tuesday night, Round Guy Radio will be at Hillcrest for Columbus and Hillcrest, and we'll also get a chance Friday to see Columbus take on the Highland Huskies, so we'll get them on there. But believe it or not, I'm pretty popular up there with the Mennonites. The Mennonites think I'm all right, and I find that a good deal because I kind of like them too.
Well, I tell you, looking at the games today coming up, I think one of the biggest games, not only in our area, but in the state of Iowa, is going to be at Davenport Assumption High School today at 3:00. and it's the number 4 Burlington Notre Dame coming in at 11-0, and they are taking on Marquette Catholic. Marquette Catholic up north, almost up near like Dubuque. They are 9-0. They're ranked number 6 in 1A. So you've got the number 4 versus number 6 playing on a neutral floor at Davenport Assumption. This game was set up this summer. Both teams knew they were going to be pretty good. They were both looking for a really good, January test to kind of see where they're at. And so this game has huge implications, not just from a state ranking standpoint, but the winner of this game, if the winner can kind of make it to Des Moines or possibly run the table, this could really help them for seeding when it comes to state tournament time. So this one's got a huge implications. It'll be interesting to see. Notre Dame hasn't really, outside of just a couple of games here and there against maybe Central Lee at their place, really hasn't been tested. And so don't know a ton about Marquette Catholic. They're led in scoring by, it's kind of by committee. They got a kid named Weber who's averaging 13. They got another kid, Roeder, who's averaging 13. They got another kid, Smith, who's averaging 12.5. So they're a very balanced team. They're going to be well coached, ready to go. So it'll be interesting. Notre Dame had to go all the way south down to Van Buren. Now they're leaving. I know my daughter's leaving at 10:30, so I would assume everybody's leaving at the same time. So they're going to get on the bus here in a little bit, drive up to Davenport for that one. And that game will be on Huddle, I believe, for Davenport Assumption's Huddle page. So anybody that's listening to the podcast here, if you want to check that game out, I do believe the Davenport Assumption's Huddle will be broadcasting that game. I won't be able to go, so I'm going to have to watch it online. I've got SCC Indian Hills broadcast tonight at 7. So,
well, that's going to be exciting. I know Scotty Melvin's excited about the SEC games and stuff, and he sent me some scores last night. I think he was watching the Washington Burlington game there. Yeah. So Waco, maybe they played Winfield or something. I don't know if they had a day off.
Yeah. So today Waco is at New London, and that game will be at 6:30 tonight. So that's Danville. Danville likes to play a lot of non-conference Saturday games historically. So they're going over to Durant. So they will be playing Durant High School today at 3:15. Durant's coming into this game at 3-6. So Bears sure, hopefully can get a win over there. I think we talked about it earlier, but Fort Madison this afternoon at 1:00 at Central Lee. Central Lee coming off that big win last night in double overtime. Now they have to turn around and play a rivalry game against Fort Madison. Fort Madison's coming in at 0-8, still looking for that first win. So if you're Central Lee, you got to be worried about a letdown game. But Coach Swanson and Coach Swan and those guys, I'm sure, will have the Hawks ready. But Coach Wilson didn't have a game last night, so they were able to probably drive about 3 or 4 blocks, whatever that drive is, from Fort Madison to Holy Trinity, and get a live look at who they're going to be playing tomorrow, since Fort Madison had the night off. So that'll be a good one, even though it's 7-2 against 0-8. That's a rivalry game, so you can throw all the records and all that stuff out the window. That'll be a tough one today for those boys.
I see another one that could be a potentially good game. Hillcrest Academy traveling over to the Keota Eagles. With that high score that they got the other night, I've got a feeling that Chase Hafley ankle is better. And because he had that high ankle sprain and it took a while to get going, but he started out the season a top 40 player in the state. And when he's got it going and when he's got his feet underneath him, he definitely is that.
Yeah. And, Hillcrest has Bailey averaging 19, Keota obviously there with Chitoe.
Vivito, yeah. Evan Vivito, yeah, he's having a standout season.
Yeah, he's shooting 37% from 3, 50% from the field. He's averaging just a little over 16 a game. So, he's averaging 7 rebounds. So that'll be a good one. obviously Hillcrest is going to want to keep things rolling, and even though it's a non-conference game, it's still a game up in their area. So it'll be.
Well, it'll be, I mean, them guys in Kyoto, they play to win, baby. You know what I mean? When you line up in their court, they're fixing to show you what they got, and I'm sure it'll be a good one. And they've had some good battles between those two schools. So looks like it was a great night of basketball last night, and it looks like it's a great night of basketball tonight. And I think you could throw a handful of corn in any direction and find you a pretty good gym to see a basketball game in.
Yeah, and obviously I'm going to be at the War on 34. So if you're not doing anything tonight, if you're listening to this, I honestly say it every year. I did an interview yesterday with some guys. The STC Indian Hills rivalry is one of the coolest rivalries in not only junior college basketball, but in sports. You've got, it's really the Duke, North Carolina of JUCO basketball. The teams went from 1997 to 2004. The winner of that series, 6 out of those 8 years, the winner of that series won the national championship. And they've been playing this series since 1970. And when you put all the points for both teams together, it's still only separated by 10 points. I mean, it is just super close every year. It's a dogfight. It's two towns that respectfully don't like each other. We're divided by 74 miles on Highway 34, given its name, the War on 34. It's just a cool environment. It's going to be an absolutely packed house with about 2,000 people crammed in there. And I've got a bunch of notes to do today, so I'm going to be prepping for that and watching the Notre Dame Marquette game on my laptop and getting ready for some good ball games today.
Well, that's why you're a much better broadcaster than me, because I just go out there and wing it and just try to slap a nickname or two out there during the game. I have to call that a win. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I don't know if we got to every score, but we made a pretty good try at it. So I'm pretty sure 90% of what we said is right. And I don't have anything else for you. Do you got anything else?
I just, obviously, yeah, it's a good night. Obviously, the weather wasn't as bad down here as we thought. So hopefully all these games will get on today, and we'll get back at it for another post-game show here once we get them all in.
Well, tonight's game will be brought to you by the Packwood Locker. There's a couple other things I want to say. We're going to be doing since we're 5 years into this, we're starting to have some kids that get, playing college. First year we didn't have any. I was telling Scotty that, and it took him a while to figure out what I meant. But we have had some kids get into college, and we're going to be kind of touching base with them. You're going to be a little part of that. Scotty Melvin's going to be a little part of that. I'm going to do some baseball. You're going to do some basketball. Scotty's going to keep us up on some football players. We won't do everybody, so everybody ain't going to be included in this because we ain't got hours and hours and hours to talk about it all. But there's a lot of players doing a lot of big things out there and continuing their education and continuing playing sports. And then one other big thing, I got a guy from Alabama get a hold of me, and he does hand-lined jigs, Tiny's handmade hairy jigs. And we had another guy, Gavin Brown, the avid angler. He's a big-time YouTuber. And Scotty and me and Jeff Mills are going to take on the avid angler with these lures at a place to be determined in spring. And the three of us are going to try to outfish Gavin Brown, the avid angler. And either way, we're going to fish fry at the end of all of it. So we got some big things going on, plus the Cedar Rapids Titans, which I'll be meeting with them tomorrow up in Cedar Rapids to kind of program out that season. I'll have a lot more information on you about that. Thanks for taking some time to be with us today, Coach.
Hey, thanks for having me on.